Hi, this is Growing My B2B Brand, where we talk with companies about ways they can grow to the next level and achieve their goals. We'll look at improvements that are immediately actionable. Let's get started. So today we have with us Sean Specie. He is with Elevate Experiences, and we're going to talk about B2B events. So Sean, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, such a pleasure. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So, on Growing My B2B Brand, we talk about a lot of different things. We really haven't talked about events yet. So I'm really excited to get into that. And I know you do a lot with corporate events as well as, I should say internal events as well as external events. Mm-hmm. But, what can you tell us about kind of the basics that we need to know about making events a fun experience?
Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing question. And I think it all comes back to what the poet Maya Angelou says. She said that, and it's one of my favorite quotes. She said that people will forget what you did. They'll forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Right. And so fun, I personally believe that fun should be woven into every single event. The reason why is because, what's the opposite of fun? Right? The opposite of fun is boring. It's boring, right? So if you're not going to use fun, then you're probably going to swing towards the pendulum a little bit of boring. And at Elevate, we've crafted, we have a podcast also, and we say that boring is brutal. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be in a boring meeting. You don't want to be in I don't want to go to a boring movie. I don't want to watch a boring Netflix show. I don't know, life should be enjoyed, and we should enjoy it at work also. So if you're in the B2B space and you're planning an event, you have to think about your audience, right? Yeah. Because your event is not necessarily just for your brand. Yes, it's a tool to be used for your brand to help your brand grow, but it should be more about your audience than it is your brand. Because and we see it time and time again. There's a quote that goes through my head whenever I think about this, is that nothing wrong ever came from being generous, right? So when we plan an event for our employees or for our customers as a B2B business, we need to be thinking about the audience. So our employees, how can we be generous with professional development? How can we be generous with fun and enjoyment? How can we be generous with information and do the same thing for our customers? And the best brands in the business, they do that and they do it well, and they have fun while doing it, because if you create it to be a fun space, it's going to increase your company culture. It's going to help the relationships that you have with your customers, because they're going to have that positive memory, which if you plan an event, eventually it'll be a memory one day when people are walking out of the venue or they are closing their laptop from the virtual event. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a memory. So what memory are they going to tell? Are they going to say that it was really boring, or are they going to say it's really fun? And what emotion are you going to leave them with, to Maya Angelou's quote of, hey, how did they feel when they were at the event with you? And how do they feel afterwards, now that it's a memory, telling other potential customers or whatever? So,
well, now you're going to make me think about my podcast in a whole different way, because I want people to have fun and learn something. And I hope when they leave the podcast, they'll feel like, I had a good time. I learned something, so now I'm going to think about this in a whole different way. Because it is an event, podcast. Uh-huh. I mean, it is its own event, especially if we're starting to do video podcasts. So I'm recording the video and doing audio at the same time. So it's a different experience, in both ways. But I'd love to know, some of the creative ideas. I mean, we talked about, you have events constantly. I mean, you said you have an event tomorrow. What are some of the creative ideas that people are using in their events?
Yeah, it's really fun. So we actually have an event today, and then we've got 2 events tomorrow. We had an event yesterday and the day before, and we had 18 last week.
Wow.
So it's been really fun to help nonprofits, businesses, a bunch of different types of organizations. And some of the fun things that are out there that are people doing, you and I have previously spoke about the app called Clubhouse, right? It's kind of like the talk of the marketing world and the entrepreneur world. And so I was on Clubhouse.
Thanks to you, but it's a little more than I can handle right now. So I see that you've gotten into it, but I haven't really dove in the deep end yet.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. And again, like treating Clubhouse like an event, right? But some of the creative things that people are doing are finding ways to interact with audiences and get them to interact back with, hey, the production team and what's happening. Like I'll give an example. So whenever we do an event on Zoom, a lot of times, most of the time people will use something like a Zoom because they want other people to turn on their cameras and turn on their microphones. And so we created a Zoom wall. So imagine like a giant TV next to me, and we'll have another computer logged in and we can see everybody's faces. So just yesterday, we did a game show. It's 300 people yesterday, and then a different 300 people the day before, all for 1,000-person conference. They said, hey, we're going to offer 2 different times to play games. They created teams. Their team names were based upon bands. So we had like Team Motley Crue and Team Wu-Tang Clan. And it was so fun. And it creates some camaraderie and some spirit. And then what we had fun doing was interacting with them on Zoom. And so having a Zoom wall where you can like shine the camera and you can like point at someone's headphones that they're holding up, or if someone's son or daughter runs into the background, they pick them up in a wall of faces. It's fun to interact. And when you do something like that, like a Zoom wall, what you can do is they want to be seen on that Zoom wall because you get to see it. And it's a lot like the people that are tuning in on Saturdays or Sundays for the football games. And you see, they go to like a commercial break and it's 50 different people all waving from their living rooms. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really fun one. And then I know that we're going to talk specifically about sending things in the mail. So some fun things that we've seen people do specifically. Now,
Sean.
Okay, let's do it. Let's talk about sending in the mail, because that's a creative thing. So I was talking about Clubhouse because I actually just met a woman named Rachel. If you search for like on Instagram, it's RACH Green Cocktails. And she is a virtual mixologist from the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And she helps businesses where if they want to have like a happy hour with their people, she will put together all of the ingredients except for the alcohol. They have to go and buy that from their store because of shipping stuff. But she'll put together these packages and these things that you can send people in the mail. And then she will do virtual, like a mixology class with them, and you'll make a cocktail together. So that's a creative one. One thing that we did with a client that a client actually taught us how to do it. We didn't think of this idea, so I can't claim credit, but it's an amazing idea, is they had these emoji cards, and I wish I had brought them with me. We could like pause the recording and get it, but it's an emoji card that says like awesome with like a cartoon explosion, or like a unicorn, or a you're on mute, or a thumbs up emoji. So you can, if you have a wall of Zoom faces, you can have them hold up emoji cards to react to speakers and things. So there's a lot of creative things that people are doing. And I think the biggest thing, like most of it is centered around, from what I've seen, getting people involved in the event, getting them to do something rather than just be a spectator.
Yeah, no, I think it's very challenging. I think that, we've all attended virtual events in the last, 9 months. And some have been great and some have been not so great. And I think that now's the time that we've been doing this so long now that people are really having to decide, like, okay, are we going to keep this being a, road like thing that we just do over and over again? And it's like a webinar, basically, like, we've done, you attend all these webinars where people just do it over and over and over again. And events really have the opportunity to be something really different. Now, I wanted to ask you about the risks of planning events during COVID, because, things used to be really in person, and we've had to rebuild this online, but like, what have you seen in terms of changes with events during COVID?
Yeah. Well, I know that we've drastically seen, obviously, the rise in virtual events. Like virtual event software companies are popping up everywhere. I don't know how many demos I've done in the last 6 months for different things. So there's tons of different options to choose from, and a lot of them are great for different reasons. But as far as the changes in the actual event space, there is now a difference between an in-person event a hybrid event, a virtual event, and then a live streamed event. Okay. And there's kind of these 4 categories going. So a live and in-person event would be everybody's in the room with you, whether that's 5 people around a conference room, or if you and I were doing something, just the 2 of us. Because an event, right? An event is like I define it as a moment in time when something happens. My daughter and I were playing this morning before breakfast. That was an event in our life. It might, and it doesn't, when we think as a B2B brand, it doesn't have to be this grandiose conference. A lot of times that's what people think. They're like, oh no, there's no way I can do an event. Well, what if you did a Zoom brainstorm with 20 of your favorite clients and you invited in 3 clients that are thinking about hiring you? Yeah. Or you did the opposite and you brought in 20 clients that are thinking about hiring you, and you bring in 3 that are raving fans of yours, for all to brainstorm around a problem that they're all like, it's a common problem in all of their business, right? That's an event. And so, but the 4 categories is really interesting. So live and in person is everyone's in the same room together. Then there's a virtual event, which everyone knows everyone is in a different space, right? Except for maybe the broadcast team. Then there's a hybrid event and a live streamed event. So the difference between the 2 is a live streamed event is you have like, so we were in Miami 2 weeks ago. There's about 40 people socially distant in this huge ballroom. And they had about 30 people that didn't either feel comfortable or couldn't be there for the conference. And so we live streamed it with them. So that's a lot. The difference between the live stream and the hybrid is the live stream is it's a similar experience to what people are having in the room, but you're broadcasting it onto a Zoom or a Hop-In or something like that so that other people can watch. Now a hybrid event would be you have 2 different experiences happening parallel to one another. So you're basically producing a virtual event because you have like a whole production team dedicated to just virtual, a virtual MC. The speakers might be different. Some of the content could be the same, but it's a different experience. And you're producing it differently than the in-person experience. And you have a whole different production team for just the people in the room. So there's some major differences. And personally, like if I'm putting on my Nostradamus hat and I'm picking up like my crystal ball, right? And I'm predicting the future. Here's what I personally think is that there's a lot of businesses, number one, they're saying, hey, we don't need a home office anymore. And so we're going to stick to virtual, but people still need to feel connected to each other, right? So like tomorrow, for example, we're doing an all-day meeting from 9:30 a.m. Eastern until about 3 p.m. Eastern for this company. And they're bringing us in because they want it to feel different than just hey, let's get together and talk shop kind of thing for 6 hours. And so we're helping them do some interactive elements. We're helping them break into breakout rooms. We're going to run Zoom for them so that they can just focus on meeting and enjoying each other's company. And at the end of the day, they have said, like I asked them, I said, hey, when people are logging off, what do you want them to feel? Yeah. And they said, we want them to feel connected. Yeah. And so just like, I know that there are some companies that are going all virtual. That is great, but your people still need to feel connected to your vision, to your mission, to your values, and to each other so that you can have increased, like you don't want to have siloed where people are they're staying in their lane and they're not talking to each other, right? The right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing kind of thing. Yeah. So I think it's super important. And then my Nostradamus hat is that there are some events that have gone virtual that will never go back to being person. And I think there are some events that are, hey, as soon as we can, we're all getting back together.
What do you think? I mean, if you had to guess, what's the percentage of, companies or events really that are going to just stay online? Kind of like, people are moving into their offices and staying in, or moving out of their offices rather, and staying, virtual in terms of companies. What do you think the percentage is for people that are going to go back to in-person events versus, staying online, even when we're at a point that we can all get back together, God willing?
Yeah. That's a great question. I don't know if I can even take a stab at the percentage, but here's a great example. So the same company that we did the conference for in Miami, they're an all virtual. They don't have a dedicated office space. Everyone is working remotely. But here's the thing is that now that the virtual events, the platforms that we use and people are more comfortable to it, I think what a lot of companies are going to do in those instances is they're going to do more events, but do them virtually. And then every quarter or every twice a year or something like that, they're going to get together. And when they do, it's going to feel special. But if you want your people to feel connected to each other and not feel like, oh, I only get to see these people twice a year, you just do more virtually. And there's a lower barrier to entry. You're not paying for travel. You're not paying for hotel. You're not paying for food. You're not taking them out of the office for an extra day. If they're like flying across the country or across the world, they can open up their laptop and join. Like, it's funny with virtual events, people are logging in either 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after the thing starts. So the travel is a lot easier because all you got to do is go to your laptop. So it's interesting to definitely think about, but I really do think that virtual events will continue on the future, whether or not we can get together in person, because of the accessibility for people to get there. Cause like, it's not just COVID, right? Sometimes people can't come either because of cost. And sometimes people can't come because of certain life instances. Like, what if you are a husband or a wife and you guys have a newborn? You wouldn't necessarily be able to travel for that, right? You want to be able to stay home and help with that, but you can still attend something virtually.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, I mean, we talking about the difference between, online events and offline events and hybrid events and live stream events. And, the idea of how things have changed, in terms of COVID. I guess, do you have any other insights in terms of how things are different between employees and, clients, especially, I know we just talked about this a little bit, but, thinking of, maybe the scale of things in terms of, and affordability too. I mean, just like, what the company can do based on you're used to allocating a certain amount of money for events. If you're a host of an external event that you're expecting prospects and partners and all these people to come to, you're investing millions of dollars a lot of times. Like, I worked with some, ERP vendors like a NetSuite or Oracle, and they would invest like millions of dollars in these events. That's one thing, but people aren't necessarily used to investing as much in internal events. Cause like you said, they're used to just like coming together in a town hall meeting and that's it, right? That, they come together in a room, they have a slideshow, maybe we have like one fun activity and, then you're off and you're back to your desk and, it's kind of like, okay, thank God the meeting's over, but now that, we have this opportunity, I mean, what do you recommend for companies that, need to engage with their employees? I mean, we talked about like, obviously having people fly in or not fly in, things like that. But, are there specific ways, specific tools that you might recommend for engaging with employees?
That's an amazing question. And kind of the question behind the question that I'm hearing you ask is, what is the ROI, right? What's the return on investment for our time and our money at planning these events for employees internally or even externally for customers? Customers might be easier because you can say, hey, we signed X number of deals and we saw that they came to this event, right? So that might be a little bit easier. And the ROI of events is really tough. I was actually at South by Southwest back in 2019 in Austin, Texas, and I was listening to, it was a big conference. If you're not familiar, if you're listening to this or watching this, you're not familiar with South by Southwest. It's a massive conference that happens on technology and movie industry and music industry. And I was in a room with probably about 150 people listening. And it was like the head of events for Southwest Airlines, head of events for the parent company of like Dos Equis and Corona, and then someone else. And someone asked the same question from the audience. And these three people that are in charge of like events for these three huge companies, they all kind of look at each other and they're like, if you figure that out, let us know how do you measure the ROI? But I think the best do it is there's a meme that floats around about once a year, usually on this subject. And it's a hypothetical conversation between a CEO and a CFO. And the CFO asks a question, which if you're a CFO and you're listening to this, I'm sorry, it's just kind of a stereotype that people put, but the CFO is asking the question, what happens if we spend all this time and money on our employees and they leave us?
Right.
Right. And then the very next line is the CEO, and the CEO says, well, what happens if we don't and they stay?
Yeah.
So, and I think it was Peter Drucker that said culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you have a amazing company culture and the strategy you're figuring out together, and maybe you don't have everything like nailed down, then you can still win because you're trying to reach a mountaintop together. But, and it's, I mean, if you look at sports, that's a great example. If you look at schools, it's a great example. Walk into a school with an amazing culture and say, wow, I want my kids to go here. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you walk into a school where people are like gossiping and the school culture is just kind of toxic, mm-hmm. do you want your kids to go there and be in that environment? Yeah. I'd argue the answer is no, right? So if we're creating a company, could we create a company with a culture that we would want our kids to work at one day? Yeah. And how do you do that? Well, events are a great way because it's a lot like going back to the sports analogies. Why don't they just do the Super Bowl with no fans ever? Right?
It's not the same energy, right?
It's not the same energy. It's not. Baseball games, volleyball games, tennis matches, mm-hmm. golf, like all of it without the fans is a completely different energy.
Well, the basketball, I mean, my son is a huge Lakers fan. So we, followed the Lakers quite a bit this season, and, watching them live in the bubble and perform, play in the bubble, it was a really different experience. I think that the players did a really good job of kind of keeping it focused on the game, right? But it definitely was a very different experience. So I can only imagine how that, must be, like we said about, going to an event for a big company, like I was mentioning for, NetSuite or Oracle. I used to go to those events and, they were huge, right? But mm-hmm. it also did have that kind of fun energy. Everybody's having a good time, we're feeding off mm-hmm. each other. What are some, tell me about some of your favorite customers. What are some of your favorite customers and what are they doing?
I think it comes back to the very first question that you asked me, which is about fun, right? My favorite customers that we get to help put on events for are the ones that enjoy having a good time and their audience enjoys having a good time. They want to try something new. They want to push the envelope. And sometimes it doesn't work. We use this. There is a amazing trivia that you can use called CrowdPer. It's if you're listening to this and you want to test it out, you can. I know that they charge for it. We use it all the time.
I've never heard
it's
of
called CrowdPer, crowdpurr.com. And I'm not getting paid to promote them. This is free marketing for them, but it's awesome. It has worked so well as long as your computer is hardwired into the internet. If your computer is on Wi-Fi, it doesn't work the greatest because it's refreshing constantly in the background. But you can have leaderboards up. You can have individuals battling each other. It's really fun way to play trivia. You basically, if you're on Zoom on your laptop, you would pull up your phone and go to a website and type in your name and type in a code, and then you get to play trivia with everybody.
It's kind of
so fun.
Exactly. Jackbox. My kids love that stuff.
Oh, Jackbox games. There are some hilarious and really fun Jackbox games too. So that's a great option for different things. So CrowdPer is super fun. And again, like you asked, who are my favorite customers? My favorite customers are the people that are, number one, having fun, but they're also the customers that are using events as a strategy to help their business grow. Why? Because it means, going back to the CEO, CFO conversation, it means that they are strategically investing in relationships with their employees and strategically investing in a relationship with their customers. And here's the bottom line. There's this amazing book written by a Jewish rabbi named Daniel Lapin. It's called 40 Business Secrets from the Bible. And he, one of the things that he unpacks in this book is the principle that businesses, at its core, the purpose of any business is simply to help make someone's life better.
Interesting.
Right? And so if that's the core principle and you really do believe that and you want to make someone's life better, what better way to build a relationship with someone, with your employees, so that they stay around and so that they become better and your business becomes better, and then invest in a relationship with your customers. So those are definitely our favorite clients.
That's awesome. So, a last question for you here. Where do you see events going, as we move forward into probably at least another few months of COVID time? And, do you think that events are going to increase or decrease in importance?
That is a great question. And I think the simple answer is yes. So I personally believe that just events aren't going anywhere. Like, I cannot wait to take my wife and daughter to a baseball game or to a football game and to be around thousands of other people that are just screaming their faces off, cheering for their team and having a good time together. Right? Because like what we're talking about is building a tribe and being around other people that think so. Like, a lot of times you're around people that they might be different race, different religion, but you all have a common belief in, like, going to screaming your face off for a sports team. Like, you're doing that because you believe that team should beat the other team. Right. And so events aren't going anywhere. I think events are going to come back strong for in-person because people crave connection. Yeah. And then I believe that virtual events are here to stay. And I think that they should be, because it allows, if you have a business and you're a global business, you can invite other people into your event easily without having to spend hours and thousands and millions of dollars on flying them in and bringing them in. So you can do more inclusivity with virtual events. And then for like the Super Bowl, why is the Super Bowl so popular? It's the big game, and people pay, like, I mean, I don't know how many millions of dollars are spent on just on commercials, right? For like 15 or 30 seconds, because all eyeballs are on it, and it's an exclusive ticket. Like, oh, you got to go to the Super Bowl. That'd be super cool. So I think that we can use that as a strategy and say, hey, maybe the in-person events become the exclusive, and then the live stream and the hybrid and the virtual are used to be more inclusive for people. Yeah. So I definitely think that events are going to come back in person strong, and then virtual events, hybrid events, live stream events, I think that they're here to stay.
Well, now you've definitely made me want to work with you, work with Elevate Experiences to make my events more fun. I think that, when I work with clients, it's very interesting, because I think a lot of it is building relationships, and it does come down to kind of some of those core principles of just, how do we connect with people right now? It's a very different world. And so looking for options that, and even things that weren't necessarily that popular before, things that, I mean, I would have never thought about doing an ad in a newsletter and stuff like that before, because those are like old school tactics, right? But I think that things have really changed in terms of what people are paying attention to, how people are interacting with the news or with social media, things have really changed. So, I'll be curious to see how things, evolve in the months ahead. And so I'll definitely love to talk with you in a few months and see where things are with the events industry.
Would love that. I would love to know what's up with the events industry a couple months from now too. So let's do it.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for being with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for inviting me. It has been an absolute honor. And if you're listening to this, I hope that this was hopefully helpful for you, learning a little bit about the events industry and how, as a B2B brand, you can use events as a tool to grow.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for joining us for Growing My B2B Brand. I know you'll enjoy our next episode where we look at ways that companies can continue to grow and improve. Thank you and have a great day.